When I think back about all of the times that we've been in the UK, I think it's been a tremendous influence on learning my craft. I feel such a kinship to the British and the UK that when I don't go there on a fairly regular basis, I miss going. I like the culture, and it's had a deep effect on me. It was nice to come back. It was great to play again. It was great to see, you know, friends that we hadn't seen in a long time. It was like coming home in a way.
In the mainstream in the UK, they came out of the traps. They were part of the culture straight away, and they stayed in the culture.
The UK was single-handedly responsible for breaking Blondie.
But this is where it all happened. This is where Blondie was.
Their first time ever on British television, and this is it. Blondie, take it away.
I booked Blondie. I booked Blondie.
I think British people took them to their hearts. We felt like these were our sort of a people somehow.
I'm through to Debbie and Kris.
What's your favourite song you like to sing in bed?
I like to sing in bed.
I don't think anything like what happened to me could happen now. Effectively, a fan stepping off the street and onto the road with a band as they become huge.
There was a period of time when Blondie were everywhere. Debbie Harry was the front runner of all of us women who were trying to get a foothold within the music industry.
Debbie's probably the most photographed rock and roll star of all time.
You have to earn that title of icon. And Debbie Harry is absolutely, undoubtedly an icon.
Top of the Pops was a must-see, and they very quickly became regulars on the show because they were having hit after hit after hit.
I found myself on the stage. There I was with my camera. I haven't seen these pictures properly since I took them.
You know what that is? It's a Blondie poster.
I'm wearing a poster.
Yes.
When we went to the UK, it was always like we were adopted. It felt like going home.
People in America thought we were a British band.
We wanted to be a British band.
Thank you for coming in, Debbie, from New York. You were attacked for being a garage band once, weren't you?
Yes.
Were people really nasty to you?
Well, business people were. Our friends and our fans weren't.
But the press put you down in America, didn't it?
Yeah.
And finally you've come through.
Yeah.
Blondie went down better in the UK, certainly in the beginning. We embraced them in a way that in America they were a bit sniffy. They didn't get much radio play. They didn't really understand them.
You look good in blue. The story about Blondie is that they came out of the CBGBs in New York, literally out of a place that a scene came out of, the Ramones and Patti Smith, Talking Heads. That East Village bohemian thing, so at the roots of it are the beat poets.
If it's all right with you.
Basically, we were beatniks. William Burroughs lived next door. Allen Ginsberg was down the street. Our habitat was the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And we were all products of the DIY attitude, you know, do it yourself.
If it's all right.
The vibe they gave off was that they weren't really trying too hard.
I could give you some head.
They always seemed like they had more interesting things going on than just being pop stars, which I think is probably true. Arty, without being elitist, really.
They really were just part of that very loose scene. Blondie were like the band least likely to make it out of all the CBGB's bands. because they didn't take them seriously, because they had fun on stage.
We were like the bottom of the A list.
But we were at the top of the B list.
Yes.
Bottom of the A list.
Before they found their feet, they were probably quite shambolic.
Initially, it was just Debbie, Kris, Clem, and myself. So pretty thin sound. And then we got Jimmy Destri on keyboards. We all hunkered down in this loft space on the Bowery where I was living with Kris and Debbie. We did intensive rehearsals. And then we were much tighter, and we had, pretty much a full set of original material. And that's when we started to attract our own crowd and started to headline. That was the beginning of '76. And then by the end of the year, the first single came out, Ex Offender, that I wrote music for, and Debbie wrote the lyrics. We kind of really hit our stride and got, the suits interested coming down and offering, deals and things like that. I can't say I'm not gratified or chuffed, as you say in the UK, that it was my song that I got the record deals. And that was it. Of course, what's next?
We toured with Iggy Pop and David Bowie on the Idiot Tour in the States, and that gave us a real leg up as far as becoming known and having our first U.S. national tour.
And during that tour, it came up that television had been offered a UK tour, but the promoters wanted a CBGB package. And I don't know if they tried other bands, Talking Heads and the Ramones. They wound up on a UK tour as well, so maybe they weren't available. I don't know. But we got offered the gig. Well, the first place we played in Britain was the Village Bowl in Bournemouth, and Squeeze opened for us.
I don't know what Blondie thought Bournemouth was going to be like, but quite the opposite of CBGB's club and the punk movement in New York,
It's like one of these English coastal, resort towns.
They've got to do a warm-up. They can't go straight into London. So they want to do something outside first. Their agent would have said to them, the rockinest place in England is Bournemouth. It's like the punk town, it's like punk on sea. And the band would go, oh yeah, great, we'll do that. So through that strange quirk of fate, Bournemouth is now on the musical map, which is the last place that you would have thought was the place that they first performed here. Squeeze, we'd been together for a bit. We were aware through reading the music papers of Blondie and of Debbie and everything because we'd seen their pictures and heard their records. So when the thing came up, would you like to support them? Yes, please.
I was invited down here by Squeeze because I knew them quite well. I'm not sure who Blondie were back in 1977. I mean, they were a band which I'd heard of, but I perhaps wasn't very much aware of. I mean, they were intriguing, they were interesting.
I remember watching Squeeze and then in great anticipation waiting for Blondie to come on. And I remember it was quite an electric feel. It was very exciting.
I remember the actual gig because the stage was very, very low, and also then the physicality. Everybody went crazy and was pogoing and going nuts, and we were all like taken aback initially, and it was very exciting. In New York, there was really no rock dance going on when we left.
This was the first time we played for a British audience, and we were not prepared for how crazy they went.
One of the ways that the punk audience would show their affection was by gobbing at them, and it was a big thing. It was a sign of huge appreciation for Blondie. I don't know if they were expecting this. It would have been a bit of a surprise. You know, it's a quaint English custom.
Hey, it was tough. It was real. This is how they show their appreciation. Yeah, because we're down in the streets with them.
That was a surprise to me, that people would spit on you when you played. But if you did it in New York, you'd probably get your head smashed or something.
There's the original ticket stub for the 1977 concert.
Oh, yes.
It was Blondie plus Squeeze, the Village Bowl, Glenfern Road, Friday the 20th of May 1977. And it was 70 pence for students to get in and £1 for guests. I paid £1.
Oh, my goodness.
This is my photograph of me with Debbie.
Oh my goodness. That's brilliant. That's wonderful.
That's my proudest possession. Yeah, I've still got the photographs, still got the memories, and good memories at that.
In a previous life, I'd studied photography at Bournemouth College. So I came to the gig and I took with me a little camera that I used to carry almost everywhere. I managed to get backstage and smuggle the camera in with me and take a few snaps. I asked Debbie to do a little bit of posing for me, and I like this one. She was completely natural, just like that. And she was really, really friendly, really, you know, cooperative, as it were. And then she relaxed and smoked a roll-up of some kind. And I got that shot, which is possibly my favourite. I mean, I don't think I had any idea, really, that she would become so famous.
That was like the ultimate for us to be on tour in the UK.
When the British invasion happened, it changed everything about my life. And all of a sudden, I changed the way I combed my hair. So going to England for the first time as a musician was the same sort of visceral reaction.
The music connection was always there.
And we weren't really bothered by the invasion.
No, it was great. I was happy to be invaded. I was a big Rolling Stones and Beatles fan.
Clem brought his influences, The Who, and all these other different groups that he loved.
I mean, it couldn't have gotten any better in my mind at the time. You know, it was just brilliant.
I was like, we're in London, and we're musicians, and we're playing here. It was a big deal for me.
We would just like start walking around King's Road looking for the Rolling Stones flat, you know, on Edith Grove, where Mick, Brian, and Keith lived together.
The first time I came across Blondie was when Debbie and Kris and Clem strolled into my shop, Acme Attraction. I remember selling him a really nice 60s shirt.
We went to Liverpool and saw the wreckage of the Cavern, because at that point it was just a rubble-strewn parking lot. So we went to Lime Street Station and all of that stuff.
The liver beds was quite, you know, quite something.
We were there right in the midst of the Jubilee also, and that was when, you know, the God Save the Queen was out there and all that stuff was going on.
The music scene was taking off. I mean, it was a major catalyst for the success of Blondie.
I am an anti-Christ. I am an anarchist.
1977 is a really interesting moment musically in the UK. It's the beginning of punk getting its story out there. It's about rebellion against doing what you're told, not letting the world sell you its stories anymore, trying to expose it.
I remember seeing the signs due to industrial dispute, you know, this is closed, that is closed, unions on strike. It was a total snub at society. In New York, it was more of an artistic statement, whereas when we went to the UK, it was real. And it was really inspiring in a way.
When Blondie came over to Britain, they bring some kind of New York cool into what was quite a grey 1970s Britain in some ways.
I think the landscape of UK punk was actually perfect for Blondie. They were still experimenting. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because they come to the UK and that stuff doesn't matter so much to us. The main thing that we liked was the energy and the kind of freshness, the barbed lyrics and that kind of comic art that was part of their image.
At that time, there was a lot of seriousness in the punk scene. Then we came along, you know, and we were bright colors, big melodies, and I think it was sort of a breath of fresh air.
Tell us what your new song is. This song, Rip It to Shreds, is about.
It's about gossip.
Gossip?
Yeah.
So who's being ripped to shreds?
Well, it's about talking about people, you know, as they pass by you in a bar or something.
I guess we thought they were probably much bigger in New York than they probably were. And so there was a kind of sense of reverence, indeed, when they turned up. Oh, my God, it's Blondie from New York. In fact, I think they were not that well known in New York at the time. You know, the UK was where they really found their audience. I was 22, just joined Granada, and one of my very first jobs was working with Tony Wilson. What's On was literally just a 20-minute segment every Thursday in the local Granada reports. And it was pretty much down to Tony and you know, for 18 months, me, as to what we put in it. It was a fantastic platform to basically put the bands on that really intrigued us.
It's their first time ever on British television, and this is it. Blondie, take it away.
1, 2, 3.
I booked Blondie. I booked Blondie.
Hey! Here she comes now. Yeah, you know how. Would you look at that hair? Yeah, you know how.
To get Blondie, you know, on a local news show, I mean, it would never happen now. You'd never have a band just starting out, coming over and coming all the way up to Manchester and playing on a local news show. These were different times. Wow. That is amazing. And this is where it all happened. This is where Blondie was. This is where we did What's On. And what a lot of fun we had. I mean, I haven't stood in this studio for, well, I don't know, 40 years. Pretty much the same as I remember it. I think we had a little stage. The band were pretty much cramped on one stage, with Clem Burke at the back, obviously, but Debbie was obviously right at the front, and the cameramen were really very near. And Debbie was giving it all with that attitude of hers. She had this thing that she was incredibly sexy, but there was such attitude. It's like a sexy punk Marilyn Monroe, you know, and you kind of looked at her thinking, wow, she's beautiful, but oh God, she's fucking terrifying as well. You could just feel that Blondie were going to be huge.
In the late 70s, it was really quite rare to have a female front person with that sort of slightly aggressive approach. And, you know, the songs like Rip Her to Shreds is basically kind of literally tearing up that image of manufactured femininity. So she would have this absolutely gorgeous, glamorous image, but then she'd undercut it by deliberately moving in a really awkward way or just standing stock still or like baring her teeth as if she was this sort of scary lion or something.
It was 78 when the whole thing really started going. They'd been sent on this massive tour in late 77 that had taken them to Australia and Bangkok, and that got them kind of road home.
We were just on tour constantly for many years.
9 months.
Yeah.
It was like about 9 months, and then we squeezed out another album and went back on the road.
Playing, you know, big venues for the first time in our lives, that sort of taught us a lot.
Australia to Japan, Japan to Thailand, I think. See, this is how crazy it is. All I know is that we flew into London, and that's when we did this dreaded Dingwalls show.
By the time they came to Dingwalls, they were really tired.
They just come back from like Bangkok or somewhere, and Kris had gone down with the flu, and he had a temperature of like 104, and it didn't bode well.
I was very ill, and we had a doctor come to the hotel, and he gave me a shot of something really great, which he said was B12 and nicotinic acid, nicotine, and that got me right up, but that only lasted for about an hour. So I was like half passing out. It was very, very loud and very hot and sweaty, and the walls were dripping.
Yeah, the walls were sweaty.
So all the guitars were badly out of tune all the time from the condensation and humidity. And Clem kept starting the songs without waiting and just plunge into the next song. And I kept screaming at him on stage through the din. And finally, at the end of the show, I just jumped on him on the drums. And then everybody jumped at each other, and we went rolling out into the alley next to Dingwalls.
I jumped over my drums. I think I started to strangle Kris. I remember Debbie was kind of kicking me.
I remember at one point, Clem was on the ground on the cobbled streets in all the slush, and Debbie was just whacking him. It's like full-on wrestling, and it was very Spinal Tap, the whole thing.
It was a crazy gig, you know, the good old days.
So I saw the show, and Kris, I remember, was sort of slightly slouched against one of the pillars, wearing shades. He looked really cool. What I didn't realise, of course, I think he had a temperature and he had the flu, and he was just struggling to get through the gig. I was loving it. It was fantastic. It's fresh, it's exciting, there's an energy, it's pop, but also there's a depth to it, and there's maybe a dark side to it. But it was modern rock and roll. I would have been about 21, 22. I'd been a reviewer for Sounds and Record Mirror. So I was here every night reviewing bands, and I was catching them all: Average White Band, Ian Drury, Dr. Feelgood. And I knew a lot of people in punk because I'd been at school with Billy Idol. I knew Brian James, who went on to form The Damned. It was a very, very small scene. So I realised I had to start my own company, my own PR music company. When I saw Blondie, subconsciously somewhere, I understood this was possibly a very, very big thing. I'd watched this gig and it was really exciting, and I thought, well, I've got to do their PR. We should just go and knock on the door. Why not? What's the very worst that's going to happen? So I go round and I walk past the stage, and it's a little dressing room. It's really small. So I go up and I knock on the door, and it answers slowly, and Kris Stein comes out, and he's post-gig, he looks me up and down going, yeah, what do you want? Oh, well, I'd like to be your PR. I said very earnestly, I'm there in a sort of leather jacket and jeans. Yeah, I'd like to be Blondie's PR, please.
So he's so cute, I gotta say, he's still so handsome.
And then he turns round slowly. Hey, Debbie, this kid wants to do our PR, what do you think? And there's a sort of 30-second gap. And then Debbie comes out, and she looks out, and she's toweling down, you know, and whatever. And she just kind of looks at me and said, sure, yeah, he'll do.
He was really cute. You know, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, he looks like fucking Mark Bolden or something, you know.
I know, he's really handsome.
Yeah.
And that's how I became Blondie's PR. 50 years later, with a few bumps in the road along the way, I still am. So that's got to go down, certainly in my life, as the most important knock on a door I ever made. I was determined and passionate and evangelical that they were going to be just gigantic. And I kind of made up my mind that I'm going to get them in the papers and the magazines so much, they're going to be so omnipresent, that people are going to think Blondie are English.
People in America thought we were a British band.
We wanted to be a British band.
Everything was going according to plan as far as I was concerned, you know. By the time we got to Top of the Pops, I was like, yeah, this is success.
Hey, we got a good sound to start off Top of the Pops this week. It's Blondie and a number called Denis.
Till they did Denis Denis on Top of the Pops, they were really still quite underground. It was that really put them into the living rooms of everybody up and down the country.
I think definitely the turning point for me was Top of the Pops. This was a big deal for me because in England, Top of the Pops was everything. I remember saying to Debbie, this is it, watch out. Because that's, you talk about touching the masses, that was it.
I remember coming into school the next day, everyone came in buzzing. Oh God, did you see that group, Blondie? Wow.
People who worked in factories and people who worked at train stations and painters and decorators, you knew who Blondie were. It wasn't just kids who read the music papers.
I guess we were sort of known at that point. We had an audience. They knew who we were, you know? And it just kept moving up and forward.
I'd get my NME religiously, as you do, and watch Top of the Pops religiously, as you do. And I saw a piece about this band, Blondie, who were slated to come to the UK to play. And I thought, that sounds interesting. I was about 17. I was living in London. Things were happening musically, culturally. There were fanzines were developing. So there were things like Live Wire, Sniffing Glue, Ripped and Torn. I was hanging around at the Sniffing Glue offices. Sometimes it was just sitting around chatting to people or getting free records, or it was going to gigs. Somebody said, who wants to go and see Blondie? So I volunteered. So I got sent off under the auspices of representing Sniffing Glue and presumably, I don't know, interview them for the magazine. But it was a complete blag, of course. Everything I was doing was a blag. When I got there, I think they'd been doing press for the day and were a bit worn by that sort of thing with these po-faced serious people from Melody Maker and the serious press. So I just turned up and said, "Ooh, it's you, hello." And I think drink probably flowed. Then we had a chat, we had a laugh, and somehow managed to get kind of roped into going to a few gigs and travelled with the band in a minibus.
Eddie was such a great character. We met him when he was a teenager, and he became part of our entourage, an intern, perhaps, because I don't think we paid him anything very much, but he got to hang out with us and travel around, and he was just great.
And we kind of adopted him. And he's got some brilliant pictures that no one's really ever seen. He has like pictures of us like asleep, you know, like in the hotel rooms, you know, doing like brushing our teeth.
We had this song called Attack of the Giant Ants, and we had this funky ant costume, and at the end, that was like the last song, and he would come out and do this sort of dumb hand-to-hand combat with Debbie in the ant costume, and he eventually was referred to as Eddie the Ant.
So here's a review from Zigzag. Tonight's encores. Ripper to shreds, Attack of the Giant Ants, when Ant-Man Eddie Duggan should leap on and scare Debbie, but he couldn't get his ant head on tonight. I think of Kris and Debbie as my rock and roll mum and dad, and they brought me up, as it were, over well, I suppose a couple of tours I did with them. And it was really interesting to get that unique view of the band as they were forming and developing. The best ant in the biz, Debbie, 78. I love you, Eddie. One of them has put, whatever happened to punk rock? Who knows? Thanks for your help. A lovely message from Clem. If I'd been older and wise, I might have appreciated more of the insights that I was being given, unique insights that they were. I don't think anything like what happened to me could happen now. Effectively, a fan stepping off the street and onto the road with a band as they become huge. That's not really going to happen.
All right, you monkeys, this next one's called I'm Always Touched by Your Presence, Dear.
They were prolific. They were working, they were doing the promos. But it's still, every day I'm trying to get someone on the phone, trying to get the national press to do an interview. And now that was a lot harder than it sounded. And there were two areas of the media. There were the big nationals, and then there were the music press. The music press and the fanzines were going to cover Blondie to a degree. But the serious papers, like the Telegraph and that, they didn't have music pages. At that point, they'd only had a hit with Denise, which had gone to #2. So they're looking at Elton, Eagles, you know, Genesis, these bands that are selling millions and selling out Wembley Stadium, and they're like, well, this is just a punk thing. And punk was not taken seriously, you know, in fact, it was quite the opposite. There was a sort of rejection of punk.
There were a lot of journalists who tried to be very arty and clever, and they looked down at Blondie. I think they might have been the first example of modern tabloid relentlessness.
It's that classic thing, you know, they build them up and then they knock them down. I do remember there'd be some reviews that they would really lay into Debbie, you know, find something wrong with her. I don't think Debbie enjoyed reading that stuff.
She was kind of constantly coming up against that marketing of her as the sexy chick. Rock critic Lester Bangs said, basically, underneath all that fashion plating, she's just a piece of meat like all the rest of them. He actually wrote that. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, yes, I think there was very reductive thinking in the 70s. It took a long time for people to really have a more evolved appreciation of female artists.
We learned a lot.
I had to trust the press.
There's a system, you know, there's a certain system to it, and, you know, to be accepted madly and then rejected.
Everybody was pitted against each other, and this one is better than those guys, and blah, blah, blah. But it just sold papers, regardless of, you know, what the journalists were thinking. It was difficult to navigate.
It didn't hurt them, it made them bulletproof. They knew who their friends were, and that's why I kept getting exclusive interviews. I gave Blondie 4 zigzag covers. The second one was outside the BBC, and someone in the band had the idea to attack me as a member of the press. They launched into it with a lot of enthusiasm. Then they started yelling out the names of all journalists that they didn't like.
Trying to get the national press to do an interview. It was a very labour-intensive job because it was pre-Instagram. You couldn't say, oh, they've got 500,000 likes. And one of the ways I'd have to convince the Telegraph was I'd have these cuttings books. Probably got 50 scrapbooks, and every cutting would be cut out of a newspaper and put in these books. Then I'd go and see the editor and say, look, I've got books and books. This is really coming on. It's really going to happen. And then they say, OK, we'll do a piece. And then someone designated Martin.
The Telegraph was a very middle-class, broadsheet newspaper on a Sunday, so punk music was not sort of high on the agenda. I knew that I could get that face on the cover because she was so photogenic. And when the pictures came back, yes, they instantly slapped it on the cover. And the magazine spread brought them to a completely different audience, a wider audience.
That becomes like a big thing. When the Telegraph appears, that's another marker.
I guess at the time we didn't realize it, but the record label had a master plan.
There was this always constant discussion about moving to the next level. And of course that was to happen because they hired Mike Chapman to produce the next album, which was Parallel Lines.
When I met them, they were obviously at a very serious crossroads. They were just like, hey, we're famous already, right? But they weren't.
One way or another.
But they were on the way. The first two albums showed everything that they were. It showed all of the humor, the drama, but they were both loose. I remember saying to them, you know, if there's one thing we have to do, is we have to tighten you up as a band, because this kind of don't make us play together, we're having more fun playing out of time. No. We've all got to be focused on going to #1. So that was the challenge for me, was to not lose the vibe, but straighten it out enough to put it at the top of the charts.
When we went into the studio with Mike Chapman, it brought a musicality to the band that we didn't have before.
We used to try all sorts of different things. A lot of experimental stuff going on.
Hanging on the telephone has the British phone ringing.
Yeah.
On the beginning of it.
Beep, beep.
And I remember us trying to figure out who to phone in the UK, and it's probably somebody we knew.
So we had to call before and say, don't answer the phone.
Yeah.
Because we're going to record the ring.
They learned that making a big hit record like they were having isn't an easy job. And then they put out Heart of Glass. It went like a rocket to #1. That was their first #1 in the UK.
Parallel Lines is like a perfect collection of pop songs. It was their crowning moment.
I was 9 when I first discovered Parallel Lines, and I just was transfixed, and I remember trying to stand like her.
They kept putting out these tremendous songs, and they were on repeat, on tape, in our tour bus.
If I fear I'm losing you, it's just no good. You tease like never.
And at that point, it feels like overnight stardom. But it has gone from being quite an obscure punk band to being one of the biggest bands in the world in the space of 6-8 months.
It was like Blondie has conquered Britain. It was so cool.
Well, the lady's here. Hello, Debbie.
Hello, Noel.
Welcome to the program. Chris, hi.
Oh, yeah, hi.
I remember doing Swap Shop, and all these little kids called up with the accents to us, British accents, was really sweet.
Debbie.
Hello, Karen. How are you?
What's your favourite song you like to sing in bed?
I like to sing in bed.
No, what's your favorite song you like singing
Singing
best?
best. Oh.
Oh, Debbie, it's so great to talk to you. I really like you.
The highlight for me was meeting Manuel, a.k.a. Andrew Sachs, the actor, in his Manuel outfit, kind of coming to life in front of me. I was a big fan of Fawlty Towers. Yeah.
Well, the Blondie success story just goes on and on and on. From their former #1 album, Parallel Lines, and their follow-up to their last single, which was also a #1, comes their new one, Sunday Girl.
When we did that appearance at Our Price Records on Kensington, and there were thousands of people there, and the police had to close the road off, and we were there for hours signing autographs. And it was just nuts. We barely made it onto the tour bus. It was nice.
That was really the beginning of Blondie May.
Yeah, that was like the full-on Hard Day's Night situation, you know? It was like a mob scene kind of situation.
We closed down Kensington High Street.
I think the Our Price Records thing caught everyone by surprise. Oh, and then when we left, somehow I got stuck in the crowd, and the bus door closed and the bus took off. But like Debbie, she's like, Nigel!
Nigel!
And they have to come back and get me.
I do think that one of the things that makes Blondie different as a band is having Debbie Harry as your female front person. There aren't that many standalone female artists in the late 70s. There's some girl bands and there's some girls in bands, but they're the eye candy, they're not the heart of a band. And Blondie really changes that and is singing in quite gender neutral ways.
I will give you my finest hour, the one I spent watching you shower. I will give you my finest hour.
I'll give you my finest hour, the one I spent watching you shower. I mean, although it's Debbie Harry's voice, the lyrics don't tell you what gender it is, but it's absolutely turning what we would call the male gaze on itself, right? So you've been ogling posters of Debbie Harry on your bedroom wall. That's all right, she's been watching you have a shower. They change what a woman's role is. In the late 1970s, when most of the discussion around empowering girls was about getting them away from boys. So all-girls schools, all-girl clubs. Well, it's a completely different model, isn't it? When we've got a collaboration in a band that is equally about men and women.
I just found Debbie Harry mesmerising. She was so charismatic and so unusual at the time. To be in such a, how could you describe it? Almost outrageous band. It was quite something to see her. When I heard that there was a gig coming up, I thought, well, let's get there. By the time of that gig, I was beginning to think about going to do a photography degree. I hated the office, and I'd fallen in love with imagery. I always loved having a camera. I remember getting to the gig, and one of my friends just turned to me and said, "Put this on." And it was a a press armband. I can still see it. It was a white armband with blue press written on it. And then she basically just said, pushed open the door and said, just get on with it. And I found myself on the stage with my camera. And I was so shocked. The band were playing. And I thought, well, I have just got to get on with it because I can't do anything else. Her presence was so extraordinary. The inspiration that she was giving to other women was a sense of you can just get out there and do it. If you want to do it, just do it. And I remember thinking, at long last, I know what I want to do.
Oh, wow.
It's incredibly reminiscent. It really, really takes me back. What's extraordinary is I haven't seen these pictures properly since I took them, and that's over 40 years. I printed contact sheets in my own darkroom and then just filed them and thought, okay, I know I've got them. You know, one day I might get round to printing some of those, but I didn't. They stayed filed for a very, very long time. It's going to be so extraordinary to see them. There she is. Oh, wow. Amazingly sharp. It surprises me. That should be enough in there, I think. It was always a big sadness that I hadn't actually managed to do the photography. Mostly because I didn't have any credibility. All I had was my college portfolio, and I'd also had my daughter. So it was a very, very difficult time to be thinking about freelancing in that kind of world. I didn't have any family to help me. I suppose in some way I lost the confidence. I just let it go. I have a quite joyful feeling that these pictures that I thought were kind of lost in the depths of obscurity are actually going to be seen at long last. And it just feels like, I can't think what the word is, success at last, at last.
That's nice. That's really nice.
I don't know what the hell that is.
Yeah, what the fuck is that?
Paper dress?
So it's a... Oh, Jesus Christ, you know what that is?
What?
It's a poster. It's a Blondie poster.
As I'm wearing a poster.
Yes.
It looks kind of good.
Debbie Harry, her style was incredible. She always looked... I was going to say the bollocks, but I don't want to say that. The thing is the look, the style. It's about the person. Someone can wear great clothes, but they don't have it. She had it all. She could have, and she did, wear a bin liner. She could wear anything and look fantastic because it's all here. It's here, it comes from here. So I met Debbie and Kris. It was a London Fashion Week and I was at this fancy party, cocktail in my hand, spread out on a settee, wearing one of my new pieces. It was a black, wet-looking mesh catsuit, totally relaxed off my head like this. And in walks Debbie Harry and I'm like, oh my God. So she's walking towards me and I'm gradually getting composure. And I didn't even say hello. I think I just said, you want one of these, don't you? And she said, maybe I do. And I thought, we're going to be real good friends. I make clothes to make women feel powerful and unashamed in their own body. And the thing is, with Debbie, she encompasses it all.
She was the front runner of all of us women who were trying to get a foothold within the music industry. I think that in the late 70s, early 80s, women were coming into the music business and doing things on a different basis. And therefore it was an opportunity to, put yourself across in ways that you hadn't been able to before.
I remember there was this, was it the Women's Tea Party photo shoot, where they were all gathered together, and so there was Chrissie Hynde, Viv Albertine from the Slits, Debbie Harry, Pauline Black, you had Polystyrene and Susie Sue. I mean, what a lineup.
It was kind of a new thing, I guess, so I think we all felt very strongly about it, and I think we were all sort of fighting the same battle at that time. It was an opportunity. It was nice that it was a tea party, but we should have done it a little bit later in the day with drinks.
All I remember is we were waiting for Debbie Harry to arrive, and eventually she arrived, looking incredibly wonderful and girlish, so immediately everybody felt like chopped liver in the room. It's an incredible snapshot of women because all bases were covered, and I'm not really sure that such a thing has ever happened again.
That image is tremendously important. These were powerful women that were in control of their own shit.
There was no let-up. After Parallel Lines, we came to Eat to the Beat, and the songs kept coming.
Blondie are back at #1, only 2 weeks in the chart, this time with Atomic.
Listen, this is Blondie, #1 this week. Call me.
We were on an upward trajectory. Our peak of our success was like around 1980 when the Auto-American album was released with Rapture and Tide is High, which were both US #1s and massive hits around the world.
It's hard to have that many hits off 4 albums. Usually it's one hit on an album, or they just pumped them out, you know?
Things were really good. We were at the top of everything. I don't know if because of the success, people were feeling some kind of pressure. After Eat to the Beat, things got a little funny.
The Hunter, of course, that was when the whole House of Cards came crashing down. That was tough. Oh, that was tough. There were a lot of bad feelings. The songs were getting very, very dark.
Everything was fading away. Mike Chapman became not only the producer, but the referee, because everyone was going at each other.
4 years from your first hit to total collapse isn't a long time.
We should have just taken a break, but it was too late by then. It's a little sad.
Attention all Blondie fans. Don't send any money for tickets to the Blondie tour because I'm afraid to tell you it has been cancelled. They were due to appear for 4 nights at the Wembley Arena from the 16th to the 19th of September.
I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was a point where everything collapsed, everything fell apart. We do things wrong sometimes.
Well, but that's part of the process.
Yeah.
Is, you know, you have to embrace your mistake. When I did call Debbie to ask about redoing the band, she did say, "You're absolutely crazy," and hung up. So
I got a call from Kris, and he goes, "What do you think? You think it's about time?" I took Maria to the band, and everybody recognized its power. I was just thumbing it on the guitar, and she moves like she don't care. Smooth as silk, cool as air.
Ooh, it makes you wanna cry.
Maria went to #1 in England first, you know, and it was like, oh, we're back home, you know, we're back home.
Thank you very much, thank you. We are Blondie. That's right. And we have a long track record with you guys, so thank you very much for that.
I think we have a lot of memories, and I think we've been shaped by it.
We felt adopted by Britain, and it's still like that today. I mean, it's the market for the band.
Blondie really opened up the world for me. They just opened up a kind of emotions I didn't know I had.
Does it take you a long time?
Playing Blondie songs in bands when I was a kid is like, it's a really great apprenticeship. I went on tour with Blondie last year. That's been a kind of brilliant, kind of full circle. Kind of, yeah, it's an honour.
The nature of the experience that I had was life-changing.
I'll forever be grateful to them for giving me those songs. I can't imagine my life not having made those records.
Seeing those female musicians represented right there, it was so inspiring, and it gave me and my friends confidence to form our own band.
We were influenced and have influenced many British musicians, and I think that's a big part of our legacy. I guess that we stood the test of time.
Are you happy? Does it take you a long time? Does it?
Well, people have been hearing this stuff their whole lives. Well, this stuff doesn't sound dated.
Kids come up to me now who couldn't have possibly been around when the songs were hits, and they've grown up listening to them because of their parents. And they're just as much about the music as their parents were. So, you know, that's, to me, totally astounding and wonderful.